Stoicism is an ancient Greek philosophy that focuses on living in accordance with nature and cultivating virtues such as wisdom, courage, justice, and self-control. Its teachings emphasize the importance of mastering our emotions and developing an inner peace that is not easily shaken by external events. At its core, Stoicism is about recognizing what is within our control and accepting what is not. The philosophy stresses that while we can't control the actions of others, we have the power to control how we respond to them. Key Stoic philosophers such as Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, and Seneca have each contributed to this worldview. Epictetus, a former slave who became one of the most influential Stoic thinkers, taught that we should focus on what we can control, our thoughts and actions, while letting go of the desire to control external circumstances. He famously said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor, wrote in his Meditations that we should view challenges as opportunities to practice virtue, understanding that even difficult people can be a means for self-improvement. Seneca, a statesman and philosopher, often discussed the importance of developing inner strength and fortitude in the face of life's trials, advocating for a life led by rational thought rather than emotional impulse. One of the fundamental beliefs of Stoicism is the idea that we cannot control external events or the behavior of others, but we always have the power to control our reactions. This principle is incredibly empowering, especially when dealing with toxic individuals. Toxic people may behave in harmful or disruptive ways, but they can only disturb our peace if we allow them to. If we let their negativity get under our skin, we are essentially giving away our power. According to Stoicism, we have the ability to choose how we respond to others, no matter how they act. We cannot control their actions, but we can control the way we interpret and react to them. The key to maintaining peace when dealing with toxic people is to cultivate mental resilience, developing the ability to remain calm and composed in the face of adversity. This is not about suppressing emotions or pretending that negative behavior doesn't affect us. Rather, it's about choosing to respond thoughtfully and with self-control, rather than reacting impulsively. Stoicism teaches that we should not allow external circumstances, including toxic individuals, to dictate our emotional state. Instead, we are encouraged to remain grounded and focused on what truly matters, our own well-being and inner peace. This is where the Stoic practice of mindfulness comes into play. The Stoics believed in the power of self-awareness and reflection. When faced with a toxic individual, instead of immediately reacting or getting caught up in their negativity, we can pause and reflect on our own emotional response. We can ask ourselves, what is within my control here? And how can I respond in a way that preserves my peace and aligns with my values? This mindset allows us to step back from the emotional turmoil that toxic people often create, helping us maintain control over our own state of mind. A key framework for dealing with toxic individuals, inspired by Stoic philosophy, involves a few practical steps. 1. Recognize your emotions. Instead of suppressing your feelings, acknowledge them. The Stoics believed in understanding and confronting our emotions so we could manage them effectively. 2. Pause before reacting. When confronted by a toxic person, take a moment to reflect before responding. This moment of pause allows you to choose a more composed, reasoned reaction. Shift your perspective. Recognize that the behavior of toxic individuals is often a reflection of their own struggles, insecurities, or inability to manage their emotions. This understanding can help you detach from the situation and avoid taking their actions personally. Focus on what you can control. You cannot control others, but you can control how you respond to them. By staying true to your values and maintaining your peace, you keep the power in your hands. Practice detachment. Stoicism encourages detachment from external outcomes. When dealing with toxic people, you can practice emotional detachment by not allowing their behavior to affect your peace. This doesn't mean disengaging or becoming apathetic, but rather not letting their actions dictate your emotional state. By embracing these Stoic practices, you can build the mental resilience needed to navigate interactions with toxic people without losing your sense of calm and emotional stability. Rather than reacting with frustration or anger, you can choose to respond with wisdom, patience, and self-control, ultimately protecting your peace and well-being. Recognizing toxic behavior is the first step in learning how to protect yourself from its effects. Toxic people often share certain characteristics that can be draining and emotionally destabilizing. One of the most common traits is constant criticism. They find faults in everything, whether it's your actions, ideas, or even your personality. Instead of offering constructive feedback, toxic individuals focus on tearing you down, often in ways that make you feel inadequate or unworthy. They might also engage in manipulation, attempting to control or influence your thoughts, actions, or decisions to serve their own interests, often through guilt, shame, or deceit. Negativity is another hallmark of toxic individuals. Nothing ever seems to be good enough for them, and they frequently complain or highlight problems without offering solutions. Victimhood is a recurring theme as well. Many toxic people see themselves as perpetual victims of the world, making it difficult for them to take responsibility for their actions and decisions. When considering toxic personalities, it's useful to categorize them into a few common types. Narcissists are often at the top of the list, as they are self-centered and believe the world revolves around them. They have a strong sense of entitlement and demand admiration and validation, often disregarding others' feelings or needs. Energy vampires. Another type of toxic personality are people who consistently drain your emotional resources. They often demand attention or help, yet never offer support in return. These individuals leave you feeling emotionally exhausted, as though you've given far more than you've received. Then there are drama seekers, who thrive on creating chaos and conflict. They seem to draw people into unnecessary arguments or crises, always seeking to stir up trouble in their personal or professional lives. Finally, manipulators use calculated tactics to get what they want, often hiding their true intentions behind a mask of kindness or charm. They may make you feel guilty or obligated to meet their demands, all the while using your emotions as a tool for control. From a Stoic perspective, toxic people are not necessarily evil or malicious by nature. Instead, they act according to their own beliefs, perceptions, and personal experiences. The Stoics would remind us that toxic behavior is a reflection of the person's internal struggles, their inability to manage their emotions or desires. Epictetus, one of the most well-known Stoic philosophers, famously said, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react that matters." In other words, Stoics view toxic behavior as a product of the individual's nature and worldview, something outside of our control. Rather than focusing on the negative behavior of others, Stoics encourage us to focus on our own reactions. Toxic people may behave in hurtful ways, but it is ultimately our response to them that will determine whether they can disrupt our peace. When we encounter toxic people, we often experience a surge of emotions: frustration, anger, sadness, or even guilt. These reactions can be deeply psychological, as toxic individuals often prey on our vulnerabilities, pushing buttons that trigger our emotional responses. The psychological impact of toxic people is significant. Over time, they can cause us to second-guess ourselves, feel anxious or insecure, and struggle with self-worth. Their negativity can create a mental fog, leaving us drained and unable to focus on what truly matters. Toxic people can also lead us to internalize their criticism, making us doubt our decisions and feel inadequate. This can undermine our confidence and even erode our sense of self. Additionally, toxic people can trigger emotional dysregulation. Their behavior often brings out the worst in us, causing us to react impulsively or out of character. We may feel compelled to defend ourselves, escalate conflicts, or engage in unhealthy behaviors, all of which further harm our emotional well-being. The constant strain of interacting with toxic people can lead to emotional burnout, feeling mentally exhausted, emotionally numb, or disconnected from our own feelings. In these situations, it becomes increasingly difficult to maintain a balanced and calm state of mind. Despite the negative impact toxic people can have, Stoic philosophy teaches us that we don't have to let them control our emotional state. Instead, we can build the resilience to respond in a way that protects our inner peace. This requires self-awareness and self-reflection, both of which are central tenets of Stoic thought. By understanding our triggers and responses, we can take the necessary steps to regain control of our emotions and choose how to respond rather than react impulsively. A helpful exercise for developing this self-awareness involves reflecting on the toxic people in your life and identifying your emotional triggers. Begin by thinking about a recent encounter with a toxic person. What behaviors or words caused you to feel upset or angry? Were there specific actions that made you feel disrespected or hurt? Write down your responses to these questions and take note of the emotions that arose in the moment. Next, reflect on why these behaviors triggered such a strong reaction. Is it because they challenged your sense of self-worth? Did they make you feel powerless or misunderstood? Understanding the root of your emotional responses allows you to see that your reactions are often about your own beliefs and values, not just the toxic behavior of the other person. Finally, consider how you might respond differently the next time you encounter toxic behavior. How can you apply Stoic principles to remain calm and maintain your emotional control? By taking time to reflect on these situations, you can start to reframe your thinking and develop more resilient responses, helping you protect your peace while navigating interactions with toxic individuals. Recognizing and understanding toxic behavior, as well as its impact on your emotional well-being, is a critical first step in building resilience. By integrating Stoic practices such as self-reflection, emotional mastery, and focusing on what is within our control, we can learn to handle toxic people with greater composure and strength, protecting our peace in the process. One of the most effective ways to protect your emotional well-being when dealing with toxic people is by establishing and maintaining clear boundaries. Boundaries are essential for safeguarding your inner peace and ensuring that you do not allow the negative behaviors of others to overwhelm or control your emotional state. In Stoic philosophy, boundaries can be seen as a means of self-protection, much like a fortress or citadel designed to keep harmful influences at bay. Just as a fortress has walls to protect its inhabitants from external threats, your emotional boundaries create a space that shields you from toxic people and situations, allowing you to maintain your calm, focus, and sense of self. Imagine that you are the ruler of a kingdom, and your emotional well-being is the kingdom itself. If you allow anyone to enter the kingdom without restriction, the peace within can easily be disrupted. However, by constructing strong boundaries around your kingdom, you can determine who and what is allowed in, protecting your resources, your emotional energy, from being drained. These boundaries are your protection, enabling you to choose how you engage with others and ensuring that your emotional state remains stable despite external pressures. To start building these emotional walls, it's important to identify specific behaviors that you find toxic or draining. Toxic people often exhibit actions that violate your sense of respect, safety, or emotional security. These might include constant criticism, manipulation, gaslighting, blame shifting, or even disrespectful language. Understanding the exact behaviors that trigger emotional distress can help you establish boundaries that are tailored to your needs. Consider your relationships with my friends, family, and my co-workers. Each of these dynamics might require different types of boundaries based on the nature of the relationship and the behaviors you encounter. With friends, you might set boundaries around how much emotional labor you are willing to offer. For instance, you might say, "I'm happy to listen to your problems, but I can't engage in negativity for prolonged periods." This sets a limit on how much you allow their emotional challenges to affect you. with family. Sometimes family members can be the most difficult to set boundaries with due to deep emotional ties. However, it's crucial to maintain a boundary around respect. For example, if a family member constantly criticizes your choices or crosses personal lines, you might say, "I understand you have your opinions, but I need you to respect my decisions." At work, toxic colleagues can make the work environment stressful and draining. A boundary in this setting might involve establishing limits around how much personal time you are willing to give to work-related matters. For example, "I'm happy to work with you on this project, but I need to leave at 5 p.m. to maintain my work-life balance." Once you have identified what behaviors feel toxic or draining, it's essential to decide where you will draw the line. Boundaries are personal, and they can vary depending on the situation. It's up to you to decide what you are no longer willing to tolerate. Setting boundaries is not about creating walls that isolate you from others, but about preserving your emotional well-being while still maintaining healthy relationships. In Stoic thought, it's not the external behavior of others that should dictate your emotional state, but rather your internal response. This means that when you set boundaries, you must communicate them clearly and assertively, but also with compassion and respect. Your goal is not to escalate conflict, but to ensure that your emotional needs are being met without harming others. When communicating your boundaries, it's crucial to use I statements rather than blaming or accusing language. Using I statements centers the conversation on your feelings, making it less likely to provoke defensiveness. For example, instead of saying, "You always criticize me and I can't stand it anymore," try saying, "When I receive constant criticism, I feel disrespected and discouraged. I need to set a boundary around how we communicate." Instead of, "You're always demanding too much of my time, and it's exhausting," try, "I need to make time for my personal life, so I can't always be available outside of work hours." By framing your boundaries this way, you are focusing on your needs rather than criticizing the other person's behavior, which opens the door for more productive, compassionate dialogue. In addition to using I statements, it's important to be consistent in your communication and clear in your expectations. For example, if someone continues to cross your boundary despite your clear communication, you need to reassert it. This might look like, "I've told you before that I need to limit our conversations about work outside of office hours. If this continues, I will need to disengage from this conversation." Setting boundaries can be challenging, especially when toxic individuals resist or react negatively. Some people, particularly those who are accustomed to pushing boundaries, may try to manipulate or guilt you into backing down. It's important to remain firm and friends consistently uphold your boundaries, no matter how others react. People who are used to being able to violate your boundaries may feel uncomfortable or even angry when they realize they can no longer manipulate you. They may try to dismiss your feelings or question your intentions, but it's crucial to stay grounded. And remind yourself that your boundaries are not negotiable. In Stoic philosophy, we learn that our peace of mind comes from within, not from the approval or acceptance of others. The Stoics teach us to focus on what is in our control, our actions, our responses, and our emotional state, rather than seeking external validation or approval. If someone resists your boundaries, it's helpful to remain calm and steadfast in your response. For instance, you might say, "I understand that you may not agree with my boundaries, but this is what I need in order to maintain my well-being." Often, toxic individuals will test your boundaries to see how much they can push before you give in, but by remaining consistent, you reinforce that your well-being is non-negotiable. Another strategy for dealing with resistance is to anticipate objections and prepare yourself to calmly respond. If a person tries to argue or manipulate you, you can remind them of your previous conversations and emphasize the importance of mutual respect. "I've shared with you before that I need space to focus on my own needs. I value our relationship, but I need this boundary to be respected in order to continue engaging positively. Establishing and maintaining boundaries is essential for protecting your emotional well-being, especially when dealing with toxic people. Boundaries act as a shield that safeguards your inner peace, ensuring that you are not overwhelmed or controlled by the behavior of others. The Stoic philosophy teaches us that while we cannot control the actions of others, we can control how we respond and what we are willing to tolerate. By defining your boundaries, communicating them clearly and compassionately, and standing firm in the face of resistance, you can protect yourself from toxic influences and preserve your emotional health. Ultimately, boundaries are a form of self-care, allowing you to live with greater clarity, calmness, and confidence. Setting boundaries is not just a theoretical exercise, it's something you'll need to practice in real-world situations where emotions can run high and toxic people often push your limits. Let's explore how this might look in a variety of contexts. Imagine you're at a family gathering, and one of your relatives continuously makes passive-aggressive comments about your life choices or criticizes your appearance. In this scenario, a boundary might look like calmly stating, "I'm not comfortable discussing my personal life in this setting. Let's change the subject." And then redirecting the conversation to a neutral topic. This ensures you don't get drawn into an argument or allow their negativity to affect your emotional state. Another option is politely but firmly saying, "I'm not engaging in this kind of conversation today. Let's talk later if you'd like to discuss something else." Setting this boundary can help you avoid becoming emotionally drained by toxic family dynamics. In a work environment, toxic colleagues might gossip, undermine your contributions, or make unreasonable demands on your time. A strong boundary could involve limiting how much personal information you share, politely saying no when asked to take on tasks that are outside your role, or asserting your need for uninterrupted focus time. For example, "I understand that you're under pressure, but I can't take on this additional task right now. Let's revisit it later when I have more capacity." Setting clear professional boundaries helps protect your time and energy, ensuring you're not being exploited or manipulated. Sometimes friends can also cross boundaries, especially when they regularly expect emotional support but are unwilling to reciprocate. A boundary here might involve telling a friend, "I'm happy to be there for you, but I need you to be more considerate of my time. I can't always be available when you want to vent." This could also mean letting the friend know that you need some time for yourself, especially if their emotional volatility drains you. Setting a clear boundary allows you to protect your emotional resources while still being supportive in a balanced way. These examples show how boundary setting isn't about cutting people off or being rude. It's about protecting your energy and ensuring that relationships remain healthy and mutually respectful. Now that we've explored some examples, take a moment to reflect on your own relationships. Write down at least 3 specific situations or people where you've felt emotionally drained or hurt by toxic behavior. For each, consider the following questions. 1. What behaviors or actions from this person caused the most emotional distress? 2. What boundaries could I set to protect myself in this situation? 3. How can I communicate this boundary clearly and assertively? 4. What steps will I take if my boundary is not respected? By reflecting on these questions, you'll be able to identify where you need to create stronger boundaries and how to communicate them effectively. Take your time and revisit these notes regularly to reinforce your commitment to protecting your emotional well-being. The Gray Rock Method is a powerful tool for handling toxic individuals. It involves becoming emotionally unresponsive to the toxic person's behavior, effectively making yourself as boring and uninteresting as a gray rock. This strategy denies the toxic person the emotional reaction they crave and prevents them from manipulating or draining you. The goal is not to engage, escalate, or react emotionally, but instead to maintain a neutral, calm demeanor in the face of toxic behavior. The Stoics believed in emotional independence, The idea that we should not let external events or the behavior of others dictate our emotional state. In their view, our emotional responses are not caused by other people's actions, but by our own interpretations of those actions. If we allow others to control our emotions, we are giving away our power and letting external forces disturb our inner peace. In Stoic philosophy, we learn that it's our reaction skarks to events, not the events themselves, that determines whether we remain calm or become upset. The Stoics emphasized practicing detachment, which doesn't mean disconnecting from our feelings, but rather choosing not to let them control us. This is where the grey rock method aligns with Stoic thought. By detaching emotionally, we regain control over our inner peace and maintain our emotional energy, no matter how toxic the person or situation may be. By implementing this approach, you allow yourself to stay grounded and neutral, not investing emotionally in a toxic person's behavior. This emotional detachment helps prevent burnout and reduces the likelihood that the toxic person will continue to draw you into their negative energy. The grey rock method isn't about shutting down or pretending to be uninterested in the toxic person. It's about preserving your emotional energy by refusing to react to their negativity. Here's how you can apply this method in practical situations.